I see ISO 5060 really not working for 100% with AI. Perhaps to 1995 terminology, you can tick the boxes with AI, super, it works. Yeah, but the meaning has to be done by a human, and this is why we say it's a human-based approach.
Welcome everyone to Slator Pod. Today on the podcast, we welcome Dr. Christopher Kurz. Dr. Christopher Kurz is the head of translation management at ENERCON. So ENERCON is a leading German wind turbine manufacturer. They've been in this business for over 30 years and they run a lot of global wind energy projects. Hi, Christopher. Thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks, Florian. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure for me to be finally on this great podcast. And thanks.
Yeah, we're, more than 200 episodes in, so it was time to get you on the podcast. So where are you recording this from today? What country, what city?
I'm in Germany and in Aurich. That's one of the most north-western parts in Germany where you can get. It's very close to the Dutch border and about 20 minutes drive to the Northern Sea. So yeah, it's called East Frisia, Ostfriesland, and it's basically also the home region where I grew up.
That's where wind turbines have to be, near the Northern Sea. Yes,
absolutely.
Unlike here, because they're also trying to build some here in Switzerland. I'm like, there's not too much wind, but you can probably still put them up. All right, so we got wind turbines, but tell us a bit more about your professional background. You transitioned from being a translator, a linguist, to translation management, and now today also a key part of the conversation will be around ISO 5060. So I want to also know a little bit more about how you got involved in that project. So just tell us a bit more about your background, career, and those different milestones there.
I started studying translation in Leipzig, started in 1999. And finished my studies in 2006. But I have started working in the translation industry as of the year 2000. So I earned as a student my first euros or marks, and then with freelance translating and so on and so forth. As a student, I was involved in the automotive industry. Worked two projects for Ferrari, and then a project for BMW as a terminologist. So I'm also a terminologist by heart. And I studied English and Italian for translation and subject matter fields, mechanical engineering and construction engineering. And then in 2006, I started with a little 5-people translation agency in Leipzig. So basically, learned everything from scratch in a little agency. Then I switched to SDL International in Munich, where I had some major high-flying clients, or very important clients. I was one of the technical lead translators in the technical team. I worked on CCTV, on tractors, harvesters, every kind of technology, basically. Did also my first post-editing projects in 26, and machine translation projects in 26. And then basically I switched to the buyer side in 2010 to BMW, where I led a global translation management project in the translation team there, and then I switched. And then I went to Deutsche Bahn to also lead a major translation project there. And in 2016, I went back to my old region, East Frisia, to ENERCON, where I am now head of the translation management department, and in the meantime, I did my PhD between 2010 and 2015 on translation quality management and standardization. So basically, I set up my own idea of a translation quality management system, and then analyzed it against ISO 17100. Like I said, it's now exactly 8 years. It has been 8 years since I'm here. And have a great team of internal terminologists, translators, and translation managers. And Love my job.
That's great. That's great to hear. Uni Leipzig, didn't they have this amazingly useful kind of terminology portal website in the early 2000s? I used it all the time. Like every time I needed a synonym or something, I went to that Uni Leipzig sub website. Yeah. Okay. I need to dig that out. I remember always going to that particular site, and like when I was stuck for synonyms and other options, it had like this graph.
Yeah, I think so. I think so about these synonyms. Yeah.
Yeah, you put in a thing and then it will give you all these kind of connections to the words. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry. So let's talk about ENERCON. Like, just what types of translation requirements does the company have? I mean, it's a wind turbine manufacturer, so there's probably you probably don't have a website in 30 languages. So tell us more about like the non-obvious types of content that a company like that would have for translation.
We do have a multilingual website. But what we basically translate is, I would say, we translate from the from the escape plan for if there's if the building has to be evacuated, we translate this to the board meeting notes. Basically, we translate everything. We are a cross-functional unit based with a CEO, and we translate R&D documents, health and safety documents, training documents, legal documents, technical documents, manuals, service manuals, installation manuals, every kind of technical, every kind of non-technical management. So we do basically everything that is required from us. Also software, localization, websites, everything.
That is somewhat uncommon, I guess, for an engineering company to have everything centralized, right? I mean, I remember some of my early clients in my LSP life, they had like something was with marketing, others was with like a technical unit, but like that you have centralized everything in like a centralized translation department is somewhat uncommon, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it might be uncommon, but it's great because we have basically contacts and we stay in touch with every part of the company. We also do all the press releases, all the marketing material, and so everything basically is going to the central unit, and so we can have the complete overview what is needed, and then we can also say if one topic is coming from one department and we have the same topic from another department, we can say, oh, there's a link, there is something that we did last week or last year, and then we can basically get all the synergies and get everybody on board.
That's like the dream of many head of translation, head of localization, frankly.
I'm very lucky, I have to say, and it's a great job.
So tell me just a bit more about like responsibilities, just a little bit to expand there. So you're sitting at the center, like how do you liaise with these different departments? How do you like interface maybe via TMS? Like what's in-house, what's not in terms of the resources?
We have a centralized translation management system. We switched from an old one to a new one 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. And we onboarded basically all the departments. We have point of contacts in every department, and we basically talk to them and speak to them and say, okay, this is now the new portal, and if you have any questions, come to us, ask us, and we onboard every point of contact, we onboard every department, so that everything runs together and is centralized. And my job also consists of making sure that we are known in the company and we are a valued partner in the company. And with my TSP background, we call the internal departments, we call them clients, because they are our clients. And we record their demands, we record their requirements, and then we transported these requirements to the TSPs for the part that we outsource, and also for the part that we insource. But yeah, basically we are a TSP within a company.
Now, if that's not enough, you also led the development of ISO 5060. And so tell us a bit more about that. I really want to delve into this now. Like, what was the original motivation behind ISO 5060? How did the project come to be? And tell us more about, I think one of the key goals was when I went through the standard was that it was objective translation evaluation. So I think that's one of the kind of the key term there. But yeah, 5060 ISO, like tell us the backstory and yeah.
Let me start 10 years ago. Like I said, I did my PhD on ISO 17100 in quality management, and this is when I got into touch with the ISO world. So I've been part of the ISO TC 37 subcommittee 5, that is translation and interpreting, since 2011. And I worked on the post-editing standard, I worked on 17100, and I also witnessed 2 standardization attempts on quality assessment and quality management, which basically didn't come to an end, which didn't produce an international standard. And as quality management is also very important for my day job at ENERCON, because we have to produce high quality translation because it's super important. And with the 2 failed projects, I had the wish basically to initiate a new project basically in the beginning of 2020. And then the DIN, which is the national standardizing body.
That is like DIN, right?
DIN, Deutsches Institut für Normung. Yeah. Yeah. And then we handed in a new work item proposal. And the new work item proposal was accepted by the ISO group, by the SC5 committee. And there was like a ballot. And all the countries were asked, do you think it's a reasonable and valid project? And it was green-lighted by the group, so it was a democratic process. And then we produced the first draft. That is the editor of ISO 5060, that was Ilona Wallberg from BEO, and I was the project leader. And we produced the draft, and then the project got green-lighted in the ISO group. And then it was like several years. And the project ran from beginning of 2020 to February 2024. So it was 4 years. And there are several stages that you have to that are basically balloted on. Yeah? So there's like the working draft stage, there's the community draft stage, then there is the draft international standard stage, the final draft international standard stage. And you have to basically pass, for every stage you have to pass an international ballot for all the countries. And so that means that you have to talk to all the participants from all over the world in virtual meetings, and it's a group effort, and that's very important to me. It's not my standard. I was only lucky to be the project leader, but it's a group effort. It's an ISO effort. It's an ISO standard. It's not me who wrote this. It's a group effort of all the fantastic people I met and all the liaison partners we had there. TSPs, FIT, Gala, MQM, we had TSPs, we had clients, we had international institutions like the EU, the European Parliament, European Commission. So all these people and all these experts, international experts, they came together in the virtual meetings. And then we had to find kind of consent, you say, yeah? Consent. So every stage is balloted on, so you can't do it my way or the highway as a project leader, but it has to be there has to be consensus. Yeah. And the initial goal, coming back to a question, was to get a standard that will be published. That was one of the main goals. Don't fail, but get to produce an outcome, produce an international standard that is applicable to most of the industry, that is not too specific, as not to limit its applicability, because the more specific you get with a standard, the unlikely it is to be applicable for all scenarios. So basically, it was a macro perspective, and to get everybody on board and to keep everybody happy, and to try to have an objective solution for evaluating translations, because very often also at work, at university, sometimes you come across some judgments like, oh, this reads poor, this is a bad translation, or I would have written it completely different, that's a bad translation, or whatever, And this is thing, like I said, with about 25 years of working in the industry and everything, that was the main goal, to produce a standard that enables an objective evaluation of translation.
Now, can we talk briefly about those different kinds of ISO standards, right? There are guidance standards and requirement standards. I think, though, is this correct, that those are kind of the two key categories? And so where does the 5060, the evaluation of translation output, where does it fall? And what implications are there if it's a guidance standard versus a requirement standard?
Basically, you have a requirement standard and guidance standards. You also have technical specifications. These are projects that have not the maturity to be a full international standard. For example, 11669 was a technical specification before. Now it has been published as an international standard. So the main difference is that a guidance standard gives guidance, and that has to be also visible in how you formulate things. The modal verbs that you can use in a guidance standard are should, can, and may. These are the modal verbs that you can use. It's in the ISO directives, a huge compendium of all the rules. And so there cannot be a shall, there cannot be a must. It's only a guidance, and whereas a requirement standard, you say, if you want to work according to this standard, to a requirement standard, you must do something as according to the processes laid out in the standard. And then the formulation, the modal verb, is very often shall. So this is a requirement. Somebody shall do something that is not an option. If you want to work according to the standard, then you have to do it if there is a shall. Yeah? And the guidance standard, like I said, is only should, may, and can.
I mean, I'm not saying it's an easy process to develop a standard like that, but does that make it somewhat easier for everybody involved, that it's not this kind of required, or it doesn't matter at all? Or because when you describe this process, the consensus, the so many stakeholders in these meetings, to me it sounds super complicated to get anything done in that type of kind of drafting by committee. So does that make it a little easier if it's more on the may, can, may and can, and not the shall and must?
It basically makes it a little bit easier. I mean, still you have to find consensus, but if it's like a hard requirement, a shall, shall is, I think, has different implications, and also against a requirement standard you can get certified. Yeah, there are like several certifieds in Europe and all over the world. And as far as I know, for a guidance standard, you cannot get certified against. And that was also one idea when we started the project. We didn't want to have a requirement standard because, as you see now with ISO 7100, so many TSPs and you name it are certified against the standard. And sometimes it makes you think, do they really work according to the standard when they are certified, or is it only like basically on paper? And we also didn't want to get into the situation being confronted with a claim that somebody is making money with the standard. There is no money in it, there is nothing you can get certified against where you can make money from it. And there was also an idea to say, okay, it's a guidance standard. We offer you a framework. You can take it or not.
And it's for translation quality only, for the linguistic aspect, not for translation management, correct?
Exactly. So we didn't want to include all the management, because if you're going for a management standard, then it's a completely different ISO process. Yeah? There's like several different stakeholders involved then in the development process, which doesn't make it really easy. And there is one quality management standard, which is ISO 9001. And that's basically the holy grail of management standards. And it's only 5060 is only about evaluating and evaluating the translation output, and that's really all it cares about.
It's kind of hard to in an audio podcast. We are putting this on YouTube, but in an audio podcast, gives kind of a total overview of like a long document like that. So I want to start with focusing maybe on the error typology and maybe the severity level. So how do you classify the different errors? And then, severity levels, like, okay, is it, how severe is it? Is it just a minor mistake? Is it, a critical mistake? Give us a few examples maybe of this typology and then those different levels. Walk us through that.
So basically what we did when we talked about stakeholders, we liaised with MQM and got them on board very early in the process and said, listen, you have a good typology. Could we use, could you see that ISO 5060 is aligned with MQM? Yeah. So we basically aligned with MQM to use the first two levels. So we basically have as main error types, we have terminology, accuracy, linguistic conventions, style, local conventions, audience appropriateness, and designer markup. These are the 7 first level error types, and then we have 34 error subtypes. Just cite for accuracy, for example, we have mistranslation, we have addition, omission, do not translate, and untranslated. To make it very easy and to make it manageable. Saying this, if somebody who is using the standard says, that's not enough for me, I want to have a different category, feel free, no problem. The standard is only giving a framework, and if the user feels that there has to be some additions, let's say error categories or weightings or whatever, the user can change the standard according to the needs. Okay. And about the severity, we have basically 4 severity levels. One is neutral, so basically yes, it's an occurrence, but we don't rate it, for example. And because what we believe in is that if you want to rate an error, it has to be in the specifications. So the client gives the specifications, talking about objectivity. Yeah? So everything the client gives out in the specifications, and which is a non-conformance in the translation, is an error. So if you have a non-conformance against the client specifications, that's an error. If something is not written in the client specifications, it's not an error, because you can't hold it against the translator. And so basically we have neutral, minor, major, and critical, like from LISA, or like from SAE J2450. And we provide in the ISO 5060, we provide 3 sample scorecards, and we have a uniform scorecard that is basically saying, so the uniform scorecard says basically all the minor, major, criticals are basically 2 error points, 4 error points, and 16 error points. But that's just a suggestion. So if you have a terminology error that is minor, it's 2 error points. If it's major, it's 4 error points, and if it's critical, it's 16. And the uniform scorecard has it basically for all the error typology that we provided. It's 2, 4, 16. That's the uniform scorecard. And the non-uniform scorecard goes from minor, major, critical to 6, 16 or 4, 12, 16 for an untranslated. So it's a bit of numbers play. But again, the user of the document, the user of the standard, can take these sample scorecards and can alter the severity levels and the multiplier values for these severity levels according to the needs. Yeah. Basic example or a simple example: if you have a maintenance manual and you have like a typo on page 378, there's a little typo for a maintenance manual. That's not so. That's some kind of minor error, 2 error points, two penalty points basically. If it's like a marketing text and you have like a huge canvas plotted on 10 meters by 10 meters for a super big advertisement, and there's like a typo in it, that's a critical typo, and every kind of typo, and even a minor error can be like 8 penalty points or whatever. So it always depends. So the user of the standard can alter and vary these scorecards according to the needs of the translation brief, and also for the purpose of use, basically.
And does that make it challenging to reproduce the results across maybe different users of the standard? Like when I understand, yeah, you're giving people a toolkit and they can kind of rearrange the tools. They can maybe add a couple more tools to it, right? But have you had any feedback on like when people are sharing these types of outcomes, maybe if that makes it a little more difficult?
We haven't had so many feedbacks now. It's a little so the whole ISO work is also, of course, influenced by my daily work. Yeah, and talking about reproducibility, we worked for example, in my team, we worked on the reproducibility aspect. So if you set clear guidelines, the ISO 5060 not only provides the scorecards, but also the whole methodology and the whole framework, talking about requirements. And if you are working along requirements the client gave you, basically, it can be a very clear cut whether something is an error or not. If you say there's like a typo or there's a grammar mistake or there's a style, you have a style guide and the style guide is not adhered to, then it's a clear mistake, and then it's not important who does the evaluation, because if there's a typo, if there's a style guide infringement, then that's an error. Yeah? And then you can say what defines a minor error, but what defines a major error, what defines a critical error. So also these severity levels have to be somehow defined. And if you're setting all these guardrails, if you're setting all the framework in a very clear-cut way, then the standard gets reproducible, and then the results get reproducible.
Also, I think there's different phases. Maybe just on a quick side tangent, that you have like pre-evaluation, processing phase, and post-evaluation, as far as I remember from it. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
So basically, the pre-evaluation phase is how we set it up, how you develop your whole methodology, how you approach something, how you approach the evaluation, that you also distance yourself from the evaluation and say, I could have done this better. No. Is it according to your requirements? Yes or no? That's a mistake. Yes or no? And the pre-evaluation phase is basically also taking care about how do I work with repetition errors? Do I have critical errors? So it sets basically the whole framework. That's the pre-evaluation phase. Then you evaluate it, and the post-evaluation phase is that you give feedback, because an evaluation is fine, but you have to feedback it to the TSP or to the translator, in a manner that he or she can understand it. Yeah? Why is this an error? Why was this marked as an error? And if you get the feedback, people learn. Yeah? It's no use telling people off, saying that was a bad translation, whatever. People don't learn from that. But if you provide a scorecard, if you provide examples or the factual errors in a report, for example, we work with Stratos, and you can have a Stratos report on it, So people see what they have done wrong, why this was regarded as an error, and then people can learn from it. And that's the good thing. You can do it as a client with a TSP. You can do it with as a TSP with your freelance translator, or you can even do it as a reviser with a freelance translator, or as a translator checking the revision. So it's not bound to a fixed process, but it's flexible. You can use it in every kind of scenario.
You kind of touch on my next question already that I wanted to ask around how do you implement this in kind of day-to-day workflows, between what do you call translation service providers? We typically say LSPs, language service providers, but in this case, translation service providers and clients. So how, let's say I'm a head of language services at a kind of big company and I want to implement this. Like, how do I go about this? Or I'm at a translation service provider, LSP. How do I implement this? What's my first step? And how do I kind of roll this out? How much buy-in do I need? Are there low resistance ways of adding this or rolling this out?
Basically, the idea is that you have to say, if we want to have happy clients or a happy client or a happy TSP as a freelance translator, the work has to be good. The work has to be measured and it has to be found good. And then you can basically say, okay, we implement this as a translation management process, and ISO 5060 is one of the means to the translation management process. And it refers a little bit to ISO 9001, where we talk about quality policy. Yeah? So there has to be somebody saying, okay, we take care about the quality because we don't want to get people hurt, we don't want to lose money being sued for a bad translation or something happens or whatever. So there has to be kind of quality policy within a TSP or LSP or a client. Yeah? And then you set this program forth and say, okay, if you have internal translators, for example, and you say, okay, it's not only translation anymore or in terminology work, it's also quality evaluation, part of your day job. Yeah? And then you take, let's say, a certain percentage of work or a certain amount of jobs per month or per year or a certain amount of words, and then these are checked. And so you can implement the process prior to delivery. You can do it post-delivery. And you can you can basically set up the whole process.
So now we've been talking about LLMs and for the past 2 years about MT, in various ways for, I don't know, the past 30 years, but maybe since NMT, like past 7 or 8 years. So how do you see this ISO 5060 fit in that context, both on evaluating machine output potentially, or having, maybe that's kind of a little bit further in the future, but having an AI evaluate based on that framework, maybe an automated evaluation based on that, right? So that the standard becomes the prompt.
Basically, in the scope of 5060, it refers clearly to human evaluation.
That is very important. We should have clarified at the beginning. All right, so it's only evaluate. No, that's great. It's only evaluating human translation or human in the loop translation.
No. The evaluation has to be done by human.
By human, got it.
By a human, but you can evaluate everything. You can evaluate raw MT output because you're always referring to specifications, And it doesn't matter if it's raw MT output, post-edited MT output, if it's human translation only, if it's human with translation memory or whatever. And this is the basic idea of 5060. It always refers to the specifications. And if an MT has ticked off all the specifications. No problem, you know, you can evaluate it. But we are referring that your evaluation has to be done by human, because AI tools, if you have clear-cut rules, AI tools are great. There was a great article by Kurz, I think it's called, from Translated. It's a great article on a website. I posted on LinkedIn about what AI can do. So, and one of my frequent sentences I say there is no I in AI. Yeah? AI is great with working with data. If you have clear-cut rules, for example, is this a typo or not? You know, this is spelling. You know, this word is spelled this way, and then AI can check better than a human whether this is spelling or not. So if you have very clear rules, very clear sets, AI can be great in performing or can act as a let's say QA tool. That's, you know, you can't say AI cannot work with this. AI is great with data. With data, it's super great. However, if we get to meaning, if we get to the understanding of language, AI does not understand language. AI reproduces language, but it does not understand. And the most, from 25 years of working in translation, I found that the most important thing, which is completely neglected and disregarded by all the AI companies, MT companies, you know, they have their scores, Meteor, Blue, whatever, you know, and they throwing around numbers and yeah, it performs like this number and that number. Translation quality is first and foremost about mistranslation errors. You know, it does not matter whether you use a different term or whether it's spelling error or style error, but if you have a mistranslation, like if you perhaps left something out, or if you have just like got the meaning wrong, yeah. If the meaning is wrong, things can happen. People can get hurt. Things can break. Machines can break, whatever. And the key to good translation quality is that the meaning of a translation is conveyed into a different language in the right sense. The sense, what is written in the source text, has to be transported into the target text. And therefore you have to understand what is written in the source text. And many source texts, whether they are Italian, German, English, whatever, are very often written in a way that contains perhaps some slight errors or whatever, you know, or not written in a very clear way. So you basically have to decipher the meaning of the source text and then transport it into the target text. Yeah, and this deciphering the meaning of a source text only works if you understand what is written there, and only then. And this is the one thing AI cannot do. AI does not understand the meaning of a text. Yes, you can vectorize meaning. You know, of course, you can vectorize it and say the probability, whatever, but calculating the probability of meaning with a super fancy algorithm is something completely different than understanding the meaning of a text. And this is where I see perhaps let's say a hybrid version, you know. So AI basically ticks off all the boxes. Is this a style error? Is this a spelling error? Is this a grammar, whatever, you know. But when it comes to, let's say, audience appropriateness and mistranslation, an omission, for example, or something different, you know, slight differences in meaning can have a severe impact. And this very nitty-gritty differences in meaning can have a severe impact. And this is why I see ISO 5060 really not working for 100% with AI. Perhaps to 1995, terminology you can tick the boxes with AI, super, it works. Yeah, but the meaning has to be done by a human, and this is why we say it's a human-based approach.
That was, yeah, very, very well put. I mean, I think you need that last mile, or I don't know, last inch or whatever, of human judgment in that particular loop. And you've given people now a toolbox to apply that human judgment, and it's not an automated. It's not suitable to automation. I mean, even in the automated world, I mean, we just had this WMT evaluation come out, and the initial set that they published when they ranked the performance, the machine translation performance of the LLMs, was done by automated metrics. But then they were very keen to say, but now we're going to have the human evaluation follow this, right? So stay tuned. So you go back to 5060. So you're giving people a toolbox to apply that last mile human judgment to evaluating translation. And of course, the translation could be MT or human in the loop or what have you, right? Or pure TM based MT, if that's still left. Fascinating. Where do you want to focus on in the next couple of years with this? This is a project you feel that you've started, you carried through, and now you've ended it, and here it is. Go download it, and or is there any follow-up work here that you want to focus on?
ISO standards are reviewed by a systematic review every 5 years. So in 5 years' time, that is 2029. The ISO 5060 will be put to a systematic review, and things evolve, as we have seen with the post-editing standards. Things evolve, or 7100, which is kind of outdated somehow, because it's not the hybrid scenario. This is a good example for a standard that is not reflecting the modern world anymore, and we have to be careful that we don't enshrine standards. So in 5 years' time, 5060 will be put to a systematic review, and I could see, for example, that we have more definitions on or examples of what is a minor error, what is a critical error, what is a major error, So to give people also the possibility to determine why this is a major error or why this is a critical error. And we'll see how it all develops, we'll see how 5060 is taken on in the industry. We are working with software suppliers to have a 5060 installed as a template in CAD tools, like SAE J2450 is like a template in some tools. And we want to have 5060 also implemented there. And we have to see, in 5 years' time, what the industry says. If the industry says, yeah, it was a nice try, but we don't need it, then we should listen even more to the industry to see what they are needing. If the industry or also academia says, well, it's great, but we have slight tweaks, then we'll listen to them for the slight tweaks. From today's standpoint, I'm just happy that it was published as a standard, that the whole community of great international experts worked so closely on it. We had also academia in there, and it would be nice if perhaps also, the industry taking it on would be great, and adopting it, clients adopting it, but also academia, that the universities or polytechnical universities, that they are teaching their students even now what a professional objective evaluation looks like, but also the lecturers, that the professors, that they take it on and say, I don't judge by how it reads or how is the expression, but that we have a more professional approach in universities when it comes to translation, because translation is basically, I sometimes compare it to somebody who's producing, let's say, furniture. Yeah, you say basically, these are my requirements. I want this table 95 centimeters high of this wood, to have this coating and to have this style elements. Okay, this is my brief. There you go. It's a bit simplified, of course, But translation means working according to specifications. Yeah, of course you have a range of creativity and it's a creative job. But in the end, you are judged by the product that you produce, not by your efforts and not by your service you provide. But you can be the nicest guy in the world when you translate. If your end product is not good, it doesn't help you to be nice. The translation is a product according to specifications, and that's the core aspect.
That's the core aspect. All right. So listeners, viewers, head over and Google or ISO 5060 or find it elsewhere. I mean, it's there. We're also going to link to it in the show notes. Christopher, thanks so much for taking the time and even a bigger thanks for putting this together. So this is going to be super useful for everybody in the industry, but also in academia. I like that you highlighted that as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Florian. And yeah, it was great.